We're going to walk through creation of a certificate. When creating a certificate and using public key infrastructure, we see we have some players. Up at the top, we have the certificate authority, and within that, the certificate authority's public key and private key. On the left, we see Alice. Alice has a public key and a private key. And on the right, we see Bob, who has a public key and a private key. We need to exchange keys, and Alice needs Bob's key, and Bob needs Alice's key. This is where certificates come into play. Alice and Bob both give their public key to the certificate authority. Now, once the certificate authority has those keys, we're going to create the certificate. On the left and also on the right, you see that we start out with an unsigned certificate. This contains the user ID and the user's public key. On the left, we see that it contains Alice's public key. We're first going to generate a hash of that certificate, which is represented by the striped lines. We're going to take that hash and we're going to encrypt it with the certificate authority's private key, and that's going to form a digital signature. We'll take that small amount of data and append it to the bottom of the certificate, which is now signed. Each certificate is then distributed to the parties. What we're looking for is what the value is Alice will now have Bob's public key and Bob now has Alice's public key. Once they get the signed certificate, first, a hash is generated of that certificate, and the bottom part, that small amount of data, is pulled off. That small amount of data, which is the hash, is decoded with the certifying authority's public key, and then the two are compared. We see that they are equal, and now we can trust the certificate. Alice now extracts Bob's public key, and Bob extracts Alice's public key. Bob and Alice now possess a public and private key pair, and each other's trusted public key, and now they can securely exchange information. All web browsers have a list of certifying authorities and information on whether a certificate is valid or has been revoked. Let's take a look at this in action. I've brought up a browser with a secure connection. I know it's secure because I see it says HTTPS and there is a lock. Now we're going to take a look at the certificate that's held within that. Clicking on that, I can see that where connection to that site is private. Now let's take a look at the connection. We're going to take a look at the certificate information held within this. The details are in the X.509 version, and it shows details of the certificate itself. So as you can see, public key infrastructure helps us to ensure secure communications.